Welcome to today's episode where we explore shocking moments of convicts attacking in court. These intense outbursts show just how unpredictable courtrooms can be. Let's dive into some of the most dramatic incidents. This is Sidney Newsom. Sidney Newsom facing a domestic violence charge in Pike County Justice Court in Mississippi. Sidney Nome appeared before Judge Aubrey Rise. Initially, Nome seemed calm while reviewing some papers. However, a confrontation with a court officer quickly changed that. When asked to sign some documents presented by the officer, Nome became furious and argued with Judge Rise. The judge instructed the officer to remove him from the courtroom. As Nome was being escorted out, he lost control. First, he grabbed a stack of papers and threw them at the judge. The officer tried to restrain him, but Nome overpowered her and threw a telephone at the judge. Judge Rise decided to take action himself and single-handedly pinned Nome to the table. Backup soon arrived and Nome was restrained and removed from the courtroom. He faced additional charges for contempt of court and served 48 hours in prison. Sidney Nome's outburst in court was undeniably shocking. Deobra Redden, 30, faced charges of attempted battery in Nevada after attacking a man with a baseball bat. He pled guilty and could face 1 to 4 years in prison. During his sentencing, Redden calmly told Clark County District Judge Mary Kay Holthus he didn't think he should go to prison again. Judge Holthus reviewed Redden's criminal history, listing 3 felonies, 9 misdemeanors, and multiple domestic violence incidents. Redden, who has schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, argued for a second chance, saying he was now drug-free and not committing crimes. Judge Holthus disagreed, saying it was time for Redden to face consequences due to his extensive criminal history. Suddenly, Redden lunged at the judge, causing chaos in the courtroom. Deputies restrained him and alarms went off. The judge suffered a head injury and a marshal needed 25 stitches for a forehead injury and a dislocated shoulder. Days later, Redden appeared in court again, heavily shackled and wearing a spit mask. Judge Holthus sentenced him to 19 to 48 months in prison for the initial assault case, along with fines and fees. Redden now faces 13 additional charges, including attempted murder, battery, and extortion. If convicted, he could spend decades in prison. Daniel Stewart Berry, a 21-year-old business major named Daniel, was charged in Mississippi for allegedly robbing a store. Reports suggest he jumped over the counter, put a female clerk in a headlock, and grabbed $20 from the cash register. Daniel was arrested and charged with strong-armed robbery. However, when Daniel was being taken to court, he lost control. He cursed and headbutted a sheriff's deputy, breaking the deputy's nose. He was quickly restrained and detained. The sheriff stated that Daniel was under the influence of drugs and had also assaulted a jail worker the previous night. He faced additional charges of assaulting a law enforcement officer, and his bond was set at $200,000. Melissa Hardwick was in family court in Kentucky for a domestic violence hearing. Her ex-husband had filed a domestic violence order against her. While he explained that things had escalated since the start of the year, mentioning Melissa's multiple arrests and release from jail in April, Melissa suddenly erupted. "My personal life has nothing to do with this," she shouted. The judge warned her about being held in contempt of court, but she continued to disrupt, leading to her immediate arrest for contempt and a 10-day jail sentence. The situation escalated further when Melissa leaped towards the judge, but court deputies managed to stop her. She continued to make verbal threats, resulting in additional criminal charges. A new judge was appointed to handle these charges. Eventually, Melissa was sentenced to 120 days in prison for her courtroom outburst. Despite the chaos, Melissa Hardwick received a relatively light sentence for her behavior. Bass Webb, who was in court for attempted murder charges, had a history of violence. CCTV footage outside a Kentucky jail showed Webb, a former inmate, intentionally hitting 2 prison workers with his car. One managed to dodge, but the other was not so lucky. Webb was arrested and brought before Judge Vanessa Dixon. Judge Dixon, knowing the 2 jail employees, recused herself from the case. However, Webb shocked everyone by spitting on her. Judge Dixon immediately charged him with contempt and threw him out of the courtroom. Webb's defiance didn't end there. While awaiting trial, he started a riot inside the Fayette County Detention Center. Webb was subdued with beanbag bullets and pepper balls after swinging a metal telephone box at a corrections officer. He was charged again and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Additionally, Webb was convicted of attempting to murder the 2 jail employees, receiving an extra 37 years, totaling 52 years of prison time. New evidence linked Webb to the unsolved murder of his ex-girlfriend Bria Rowitz. To escape the death penalty, Webb pleaded guilty and got an additional 50 years in prison. 5 years later, Webb was charged with the murder of another ex-girlfriend, Sabrina Vaughn. In court, he appeared with a tattoo listing people he intended to kill, including judges, prosecutors, and cops. Webb was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Christopher Teal, the King County Courtroom in Seattle, Washington, faced a shocking incident involving Christopher Teal, a homeless man charged with sexual assault. Reports say Teal followed a woman into a restroom at a Volkswagen dealership and attacked her. Employees intervened and stopped the assault, leading to Teal's arrest. He was charged with first-degree sexual assault and unlawful imprisonment and appeared in court for a competency hearing with his lawyer, Reed Birkland. During the hearing, Teal seemed amused and raised his arm towards Birkland, but a court officer stopped him. Suddenly, without warning, Teal stood up and punched his lawyer. Police quickly subdued him, placing a spit hood over his head and removing him from the courtroom. Birkland was unharmed but withdrew from the case. In his next court appearance, Teal was heavily strapped to a chair to prevent further violence. Despite this, he complained about how his hair looked in his mugshot. The judge scheduled another hearing for the following week. Eventually, Teal was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison. While his actions could be seen as a mental health issue, the court proceeded with the sentencing. These incidents remind us how volatile courtrooms can be. Stay tuned for more gripping stories. Stay safe and informed. See you next time.